Good evening, welcome to Prime Edition. I am Cynthia Nyamai. Now, we've spent the whole day with you covering the 2024-2025 budget for you. It's been a long day, and the CS did tell us that this year we need to tighten our belts. And also some of the biggest winners include teachers, and I will be telling you who else we have been unpacking the budget for you. And on the other side, I do have Betty Kiptum, who will give us more details and has interviews for you on the budget. Betty?
Thank you very much, Cynthia. As you heard, my name is Betty Kiptum. We shall be unpacking the 3.92 trillion shillings budget, the losers, the gainers, what it means for you, your spending, your pockets, just what tax measures are there in this particular budget. And in studio, we already have our guest. It is David Kingo, who is an economist. Thank you very much, David, for joining us. Just a very quick one. What is your general feeling about the budget that was read this afternoon?
We've projected GDP growth and resilient inflation, so maybe we'll get a positive impact going forward.
Positive impact going forward. Of course, you shall be breaking that down for us and so much more. But first, let me throw it back to Cynthia.
Thank you, Betty. We're looking forward to those interviews. And in case it just looks like the budget is all about numbers, we will be telling you how this budget is going to affect your life, your business, and even certain sectors that were the winners and other sectors that were the losers. We'll be dissecting it for you. And because today's bulletin is quite heavy, I do have Betty Kiptum, who will be helping me out with tonight's bullet. But we also had drama in the courts today and so much more around the country. Let's have the highlights. Welcome back. Now, get ready to tighten your belts. This was the message from the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndung'u as he presented the 2024-2025 budget in the National Assembly.
While unveiling the second budget under the Kenya Kwanza administration, the Treasury Secretary has said the government will move to implement various austerity measures to curb public spending while increasing allocation to social sectors. Nancy Okware has the details.
Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u stood before legislators today to present the second budgetary estimates under the Kenya Kwanza administration. The CS unveiled a 4 trillion shillings budget, with education yet again getting the largest allocation, standing at 656.6 billion shillings. This accounts for 27.6% of total expenditure.
The budget highlights and even the government's plan to strengthen the resilience of our economy to navigate the global turbulence, accelerate economic transformation, and decisively address the overarching developmental challenges in line with better bottom-up economic transformation agenda. Total expenditure in the financial year 2024-2025 budget is projected at Kenya shillings 3,992 billion, or 22.1% of GDP. Of this, the recurrent expenditure will amount to Kenya shillings 2,840 billion.
Out of these, 2.84 trillion shillings is recurrent expenditure. In this financial year, 707.4 billion shillings will go towards development. However, the fiscal deficit stands at 597 billion shillings.
The fiscal deficit for 2024-2025 will be financed by net external borrowing of 333.8 billion, equivalent to 1.8% of GDP, and net domestic borrowing of 263.2 billion, which is equivalent to 1.5% of GDP.
County governments have been allocated 401 billion shillings equitable share. In the budget that focused on the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, The education sector has been allocated 656.6 billion shillings. Of this amount, 358.2 billion will go to the Teacher Service Commission, 128 billion for higher education and research, 30.7 billion for TVETs, 9.1 billion for free primary education, and 30.7 billion for junior secondary school capitation. The health sector received 127 billion shillings, with 4.2 billion going towards universal health coverage. The affordable housing program has been allocated 92.1 billion, with the Treasury CS saying that the government will continue to manage debt while slicing unnecessary spending.
The Salaries and Remuneration Commission will continue to streamline allowances paid in the public sector through harmonization and rationalization of categories, rates, rules for allowances. And fourth, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission will progressively review allowances and benefits in the future, collective bargaining agreements, and align them to the provisions of allowances policy framework for the public service.
Nancy Okware, Prime Edition.
Now, teachers and community health promoters are the main beneficiaries of this year's budget. National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u allocated 656.6 billion shillings for education that will, among others, fund conversion of the terms of junior secondary school teachers from contract to permanent and pensionable terms.
Professor Ndung'u also earmarked 4.6 billion shillings for specialized medical equipment and stipend for community health promoters.
The government has allocated 656.6 billion shillings to education,
or 27.6% of total expenditures to the education sector.
With the Teacher Service Commission allocated the largest chunk at 358.2 billion shillings. Following hue and cry, the government has allocated 13.3 billion shillings for the conversion of the terms of junior secondary school teachers from one-year contracts to permanent and pensionable.
For the conversion of 46,000 junior secondary school interns to permanent and pensionable terms.
In addition, Professor Ndung'u earmarked junior secondary school capitation will receive 30.7 billion shillings. Free primary and day secondary education gets 71 billion shillings, while university education has been earmarked 71.9 billion shillings. Healthcare is another top beneficiary in this year's budget, having been allocated 127 billion shillings, of which the Global Fund covering HIV, malaria and tuberculosis were allocated the lion's share at 28.7 billion shillings.
Kenya shillings 4.6 billion to cater for the stipend and the acquisition of specialized medical equipment for the community health promoters, and 4.1 billion shillings for primary health care fund.
Universal Health Coverage Coordination and Management Unit has been allocated 4.2 billion shillings, while specialized medical equipment and stipend for community health promoters will receive 4.6 billion shillings. Retirees are also beneficiaries after a proposed tax waiver on all pension earnings, which will mean more money in their pockets.
To effectively implement the policy, we have initiated the review and harmonization of all the laws governing the retirement benefits sector.
Export and investment promotion levy has been reduced to between 3% and 10% from 17.5%, and the list of products expanded, a welcome relief to investors.
In the Finance Bill 2024, the list of goods has been expanded and the rate of the levy has been reduced to 3% for most of the goods and others 10%.
Regina Manyara reporting for Prime Edition.
The other side of the budget, where job seekers are among the biggest losers in this year's budget after the government froze employment for the next 1 year.
National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u says this is among a raft of measures meant to contain increasing recurrent expenditure.
The government plans to reduce the wage bill that stands at 1.1 trillion shillings through increased automation of services. As part of these efforts, public employment will be frozen for the next 1 year.
Third, the expenditure control measures that include suspension of all new recruitment in the public sector for 1 year, for the next 1 year, audit and cleanse all public payrolls.
Kenyan farmers are also among those who are likely to be negatively affected by this year's budget after the National Treasury zero-rated importation of eggs, onions and other food items from EAC. Local farmers have been complaining that imports from EAC pose unfair competition since the cost of production in Kenya is higher.
Finance Act 2023 introduced duty on imported eggs, potatoes, onions at the rate of 25%. To promote trade across East African region, I propose to the removal of this excise duty on imported eggs, potatoes and onions originating from East African Community Partner States.
The cost of alcoholic beverage is likely to increase after the government changed the basis of charging excise duty to the centiliter of pure alcohol.
This new structure of taxation based on alcoholic content does not distort the markets, and does not affect the investment decision, and it is expected to encourage responsible consumption behavior of these alcoholic beverages.
Excess duty on betting, gaming, lottery and prize competition has been increased from 15% to 20% as the government seeks to curb the vice.
Participation rate in these activities by Kenyan citizens, especially school-going children and young adults, continues to persist. To further discourage this behavior, I propose to increase the excise duty tax rates to 20%.
Small banks are also among the biggest losers after a proposal that they progressively increase their core capital from the current minimum of 1 billion shillings to 10 billion shillings. The Central Bank of Kenya is expected to issue guidelines and timeframes for this. Benson Rioba reporting for Prime Edition.
And let's now have further analysis on the losers and also the gainers, the biggest gainers in the 2024-2025 budget. And Kiptum is on the other side of the studio with an analyst and will hold on the interview. Betty Kiptum.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. Of course, we want to now break down those numbers that you've had. And as we had introduced you earlier, David Kingo, an economist, is in studio. Thank you, David, for staying with us.
I appreciate for the invitation too.
Right. 3.92 trillion. Of that, the education docket receives 656.6 billion shillings.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on this?
Basically, it's a plus to the education sector because we've seen the CBC program has brought in some challenges given that we have a JSS teachers that have been on strike for some time. We also had an issue about capacity building on the education sector where now teachers have transit from 844 to the CBC system. Of course, it's going to enhance and to unlock most of the issues that have been locked in implementation of the CBC. So basically it's a plus, and we've seen some exact allocation towards the JSS teachers who now transit to permanent and pensionable. Basically it's a plus to the education sector, and it might be cool the strike that we've seen in the last few weeks.
Right.
Yes.
Of course, as you said, CBC has had some challenges in implementation, so these might actually just slow down those challenges.
Yes,
what you're saying?
Yes, and basically it's not about Kenya, it's about an African Union, about changing our education system to ensure that the people that we sell human capital, and the CS also insisted about one of the key initiatives that they want to look at as a country is about enhancing our human capital in terms of we give human resources that can really thrive in other sectors of this world. So basically that particular achievement is a quite a plus allocation, which is specifically toward enhancing CBC. Mm-hmm. Yes.
The health sector is receiving 127 billion shillings.
Yes.
Of course, the county health promoters, those have also received quite an allocation. What are your thoughts on this?
Basically, when it comes to health sector, we call it, is it preventive, then we have the curative, right? So basically that's the preventive aspect of healthcare. So once we revamp the bottom of the health sector in terms of these are people who will take you to the next clinic when basically you have the least health issue. So once they are enhanced and they are supported, basically we lessen the pressure on the mainstream healthcare system. So basically it's a plus as well to the healthcare sector in terms of enhancing the preventive care aspect of health. Yes.
What other sectors or other winners did you see when you were watching this budget being read?
We have had issues with pensions in this country. where people have complained they have left employment basically in the public sector, when we used to have what we call a defined benefit scheme, the DB, that's what it's called. Then before that we came to the DC. For the DB we have issues where people have left employment and they are not able to get their pension. So we have seen around 1.2 billion allocation toward that. Of course there is some allocation on the same for about interest payment. Basically it's a big win for the pensioners. We've also seen infrastructure whereby we are doing a railway city. So basically we wish to see that happen. It will be a plus to our transport system. And just basically to go deep inside the budget, we have a comparison of 3 economies in this world, and that is anchored on the medium term revenue strategy, a document that as Kenyans we have to look at because a build-up of the budget. So they are comparing Morocco and South Africa in terms of tax to GDP. So when you look at the transport system in these countries, of course, is beyond us. So allocation toward enhancing our rail city. So basically we say we are working towards the 3 economy that maybe we would compare with in terms of tax to GDP ratios. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And before we go to the losers, let's speak about what you've just mentioned, the revenue issue.
Yes.
According to this budget, there's a fiscal deficit of about 597 billion.
Yes.
Of this is domestic borrowing of 262 billion,
yes.
263 billion
yes.
rather, and external borrowing of 333 billion.
Yes.
This is a government that is saying we can no longer afford debts,
yes.
and we need to do more to generate revenue locally.
Yes.
Is this budget in tandem with what they are saying?
Basically, we've seen that they're trying to say that by the time we hit 2026, we need to be over 20% or 20 and 25% tax to GDP ratios. They have also said that GDP is expected to grow, and then we have a resilient inflation, as I said earlier. So basically, if we are able to meet our tax revenues that we collect, then basically with the austerity measures that they have put in place, we might be able to survive at up to some point without heavily depending on this particular borrowing. However, if these 2 aspects of the economy, both the GDP and inflation, go as per the projection, then as a country we'll be able to support the debt that we shall borrow. And the CS said we don't have historical default issues. So we are okay, our CRB rating, whatever they take it, we are okay. So basically, if the economy moves as it is projected, then we might not see the challenges that we preempt, but we have not seen the revenue side of the same. So basically, when you see the revenue side, then we'll be able to debate around it.
Of course, there's around 2.2 trillion
yes.
set for KRA.
Yes.
And according to the World Bank, a report they released a few weeks ago, they're saying that the tax measures that are being taken will slow down the economy this year. Of course, 5.5% projection is what Professor Ndongo said
yes.
of the economy this year and next year.
Yes.
Is this a zero-sum game?
So basically what I would say, and I go back to my earlier statement, that before the Revenue Authority comes and says we want to tax this particular section of the economy, of course they do analysis and which other type of incomes in this economy we don't tax. Then we check the growth of our GDP. If we are able to say, when you compare around that, I saw a statistic of around that 3 African countries where we want to see where is our tax and where is our GDP. Kenya was mostly midway. So we have an open window, and the IMF, I guess they were part of the what I'm calling the medium-term revenue strategy, where they talked about we need to increase our tax because we have untaxed incomes that we also have to look at, we cushion this particular gap. But anyway, the economy is uncertain. We are here and we're talking about positive because the dollar behaved positively the other time. So it might behave negatively, and then we end up on the negative side. But also we have seen the debt to GDP ratio has also been coming down. So maybe we might have a plus on the same. So it might be a zero-sum game, not unless the economy does a negative readjustment.
Right, of course, a reality that exists. Professor Ndongo said that we need to increase the tax base, and those measures, we shall be talking about them in a little bit. Of course, this is just breaking down the budget, the 2024-2025 budget. I'm with David Kingo, who is an economist. We want to take a quick break. When we come back, more news and this conversation much later.
Unajua, token mita yako inahitaji system update. Ni rahisi na ni free. Ukipata ujumbe kutoka Kenya Power, yani SMS, weka kodi ya kwanza kureset, alafu weke kodi ya pili kuupdate ili token mita yako iendelee kufanya kazi kama kawaida. Update token mita yako. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwako na Kenya Power and Lighting Company.
Nilianza kuendesha boda miaka michache iliyopita ili kuhudumia familia yangu. Sio kazi rahisi, lakini inaweka chakula mezani. Wakati huo nilifikiria siwezi kushindwa. Ningeendesha boda kwa kasi, kukwepa na kuvuka barabara ovyo ovyo. Ningefanya chochote ili kufika napokwenda haraka. Lakini siku moja nilikuwa hospitalini kwa miezi 3. Kosa moja karibu liondoe kila kitu. Mwaka moja baada ya kutoka hospitalini, nilihudhuria mafunzo ya jinsi ya kuendesha boda kwa usalama. Boda ni life, lakini life si kitu bila usalama. Zingatia kanuni za trafiki. Hakikisha unavaa helmet na reflector jacket wakati wote.
Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwako na NTSA kwa ushirikiano na European Union.
Asanteni sana kwa kuwezesha Lotomoto kuwafikia wengi wasiojiweza kupitia *570#. Hapo umewafuta wengi machozi, umewaelimisha, umewapa makao, umewapa lishe na umewapa matibabu kwa namna tofauti. Asanteni.
Asanteni. Asanteni sana.
Na kwako wewe mchezaji wa Lotomoto, unajipa fursa ya kujishindia Probox nayo. Na kama Probox haikufai na umejishindia, tunakupa taslim 750,000 Kenyan shillings na mshindi na mtangaza 30th of June. Na mwezi wa July 28th na mtangaza mshindi wa Demio nayo. Na kama utaki na umeshinda, wacha gari, chukua chapa 750,000 Kenyan shillings kwenye *570#. Wewe si mshindi tu, wewe ni tegemeo kubwa. Tusaidie na tushinde.
Maji ni uhai, maji ni haki yako.
Je, unajua kwamba wizi wa maji ni uhalifu unaoathiri sisi sote? Hata hivyo, wateja wengi wa maji husalia kimya bila kufahamu madhara yake.
Wewe umepasua hii gunia yote?
Hapana, simepasua. Hivyo ndio mnakujanga mnaongeza chumvi kwa chakula, customer wakiulizwa wanasema nini wale matope.
Ako wapi?
Wasreb, tunaadhimisha miaka 20 ya udhibiti wa huduma za maji.
Welcome back. Now, Betty, I really liked how you unpacked for us the budget, just telling us a little bit about the biggest winners and also the biggest losers. And this budget is much higher than last year's. I think one of the things that we are asking ourselves, even as Kenyans, is where will this money come from?
It is indeed, as you said, the highest budget that Kenya has ever read.
Yes.
And it's from borrowing and taxes.
Yes.
And of course, we shall be telling the viewer exactly what that means for them in the next interview. Yeah.
We're looking forward to that. Now, the government will prioritize clearing the pending bills this fiscal year.
Speaking at Parliament after presenting this year's budget, National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u said over 94,000 claims worth 622 billion shillings have so far been presented to the Pending Bills Committee. He says the Pending Bills Committee is expected to finalize its work in October.
Thank you. You may take your seat. Honorable members, I wish to thank the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning for ably.
We don't want to talk about how much will be the pending bills. What we have reported is how many cases came up and how much before the verification process is going on. But the bottom line is this: That audit is not equivalent to the committee that we have. We are creating a finality. There could have been an audit. It may have given some pointers in terms of where we are. But right now, we want to make sure that we close that chapter. We close that chapter because pending bills is a menace. On one side, those who are still holding debt on the government and have not been paid for years, since we are starting from 2005, you can imagine what it means to their suffering, what happens to their investment. That the moment we have a higher deficit, we are accumulating debt. Debt today, it means that it has to be repaid tomorrow. So we are increasing future costs. That's the whole idea. Then the most important thing, and maybe coming from the private sector, you have to understand, the moment you see a larger fiscal deficit, it tells you that government is going to finance that budget through borrowing.
Now, the public will not incur extra charges while making mobile phone transactions after the National Treasury bowed to public pressure and dropped the proposed 20% rates.
In the budget speech presented today by the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndung'u, the government has opted to retain excise duty on fees charged on mobile money transfers at 15%.
Bill 2024 proposed to raise the excise duty levied on fees charged on mobile transactions to 20% from the 1st of July this year, causing massive public uproar and rebuke from financial analysts who argued the move was likely to roll back financial inclusion gains. However, today the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndung'u said he will retain the excise duty on mobile money transfers by telcos and banks at 15%.
I propose to retain the excise duty rate of 15% on fees charged on money transfer services by cellular phone service providers to benefit retail electronic payments ecosystem.
The Treasury CS has also announced that the government will roll out a unified human resource information system for the entire public sector starting July 1st, 2024 to weed out ghost workers and streamline public wage bill.
The system consolidates human resource and payroll data in the public service for access through single warehouse.
The new system will be linked to the Kenya Revenue Authority's iTax system to facilitate filing of payee return. He also noted that state-owned corporations will be restructured through mergers and acquisitions to eliminate duplication of services.
Restructure the state corporations through mergers and or transfer back to parent ministries or relevant state corporations to remove duplication of functions.
The government has also frozen the recruitment of public officers for 1 year in a move aimed at curbing public wage bill, which consumes close to 45% of all revenues collected by the government. Wairi Mujenga for Prime Edition.
Behind the numbers and seriousness, the budget policy statement presentation process is usually characterized by carefully well choreographed steps. This year did not disappoint, albeit with a twist.
Two protesters pushed through and attempted to grab the symbolic budget briefcase during the ceremonial photo shoot, but he was restrained. Our reporter Alan Oko highlights the touch of flair, colorful events, sights and sounds that characterized this year's budget day.
When it comes to showing the inner workings of what the public rarely sees, especially from here, the National Treasury building, this is what happens from the office of the CS, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, to the 12th floor where the policymakers and directors and all the stakeholders from public parastatals to private sector meet to, look at the budget policy statement and ratify the figures and all that. This is the color that comes before the budget is read. Welcome to the National Treasury Building, a structure with a beehive of activities. On a day like today, just before the Cabinet Secretary does his ceremonial photo shoots with a briefcase. Inside, the well-lit corridors reveal smartly dressed staff. Everywhere. On this day, there is no shortage of roses. the single most symbol of Budget Day. One not donning a rose flower here would be mistaken to be misplaced or a guest. This is the 14th floor, where the office of the Principal Secretaries and the Cabinet Secretary are. The body language of those involved is that of excitement. When the time to leave the office and head to the National Assembly arrives, notice the well-planned ceremonial walk of the Cabinet Secretary from his office, flanked by his two Principal Secretaries and even the Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya. As we transit outside, notice the choir entertaining the public with hits after hits of carefully selected songs. The curious members of the public taking a moment to soak in, albeit for a moment, the reason for the occasion. And while the crowd was not as large as in yesteryears, it was clear that the moment we all train our cameras for as journalists had arrived. Never mind that the crowd control becomes a rule of the jungle to make sure your media house captures a moment which you only get once a year. And when the moment arrives, suddenly this protester and his colleague also grabbed just behind our cameras, enjoying a lift towards a waiting police vehicle for their troubles. However, the photo session continues, and after this elaborate and well-synced photograph session, the Cabinet Secretary proceeds to his ceremonial Volkswagen Passat. Here it is another well-choreographed ride a few blocks down to the National Assembly. The balance of it all between security personnel, journalists and vehicles in harmony until the arrival at Parliament buildings. And finally, into the Parliament buildings, the guest of honor arrives, welcomed by another assembly of smartly dressed members of the August House to deliver the 2024-2025 budget statement until this happens again next year. Alanauko, Prime Edition.
Thank you, Alan, for that report. Now, leaders have hailed and equally criticized this year's 3.9 trillion shillings budget, with legislators saying they have a keen eye on this year's finance bill that will be tabled before the August House by the Kimani Kuria-led Finance Committee.
Those who praised it say it is a balanced budget, while some hold the views that the deficit is too huge.
We are pleased, particularly in the area of focusing on the rural areas in terms of water, in terms of electrification, and also one thing that is pleasing to the hearts of the members of Parliament is the issue of CDF.
Something did not mention is about how to curb wastages in government, because most of the money is going to wastages as well as corruption. And that if we can curb corruption, wastages, and reduce on unnecessary recurrent expenditures because of duplication of services, then we'd have a lean budget.
We are also going to propose a levy, having looked at what's happening with the prices of petroleum internationally and what's happening within the Ministry of Petroleum to manage that side. So we are not going to be unreasonable to say we make a proposal that we increase the prices of goods. No, we will make sure that it's a whole government approach must ensure that the fuel levy is such that it is not going to make us increase the cost of goods, but at the same time give us resources to be able to maintain our roads. What the people of Kenya should be demanding is greater accountability in the use of the resources for our roads.
Mwaka jana tulifikiri pengine mwaka huu wanaweza wakafikiria yale waliofanya mwaka jana ya kuumiza wa Kenya wakarudi nyuma, lakini mpaka sasa naona sijui wa Kenya watafanya namna gani, manake sisi ambao tunawatetea tuko wachache, lakini bajeti ni ya kumfinya Mkenya.
I was happy to hear that there is 250 million in that was put to build a Kenya Grimery, a KCC, a milk processing company in those parts of Narok. I think this is going to be the first company that will assist farmers in processing their product, and that is milk.
You know, this budget, just like the previous one, has got a very huge deficit, a very huge hole. a huge gap that has to be filled somewhat. And there are only two ways of filling a budget deficit. So it's either borrowing or taxing. But now where we have reached, we have gone overboard. But the most basic decision we have to make is to learn to live within our means.
The budget has no problem. Where the problem is if we will be able to finance it. And of course, what Kenyans are saying and what many people are saying, they are really concerned about being taxed. But people are not talking about the budget. In any case, many people want even the budget to be enhanced. They want more the budget. But when it comes to revenue collection, people are talking about it being reduced. So there's a misbalance.
Thursday afternoon saw a surge of online activity at the National Treasury Cabinet as the National Treasury Cabinet, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, presented this year's 3.92 trillion shillings national budget. While the official announcement focused on the allocation of funds and tax proposals, it was the netizens who truly stole the show on social media platforms, as Trevor Ngeno narrates. Interview from the other side with Betty Kiptum as we find out where will the money come from. This is the biggest budget we have had as a country so far, 3.92 trillion shillings. Where will the funds come from? Betty?
Thank you, Cynthia. Of course, on the story of social media, it will be interesting to see what those conversations have been, and we shall be bringing you that in a little bit. But here in studio on this other set, we have David Kingo, who is an economist, and we just want to continue with our conversation on matters, the budget, 3.92 trillion. Of course, as we said, Professor Ndung'u said it's important to increase the tax base. He was categorical that there's a very huge informal sector that is not captured in the tax base. What are your thoughts on this?
Basically, there's some statistics about the untaxed citizens, or rather, when you look at the sphere of tax, we have around 1.7% of tax of untaxed income, or income that is not taxed. Basically, that's what we call increasing the tax base. And when you see the main tax in that sphere is income tax, which is around that 6% of the total tax collected. And you know there is a direct tax, income tax is a direct tax, so it pains a lot. So basically, we would wish to see an expansion into other categories of tax which have a lower percentage of less than 10% that we can ease in the budget on income tax.
He mentioned the issue of reluctance by taxpayers to actually pay taxes because of the fear that they are not being used prudently. And it was interesting to hear that from that high level. And when you also look at the allocations to EACC, ODPP, and all these institutions that have been tasked with fighting corruption, it seems the government wants to do something about it, yeah?
Yes, of course, one of the initiatives that the CS started with was about fighting leakages in the unnecessary expenditure in the revenue that we're going to collect, or even the fiscal policy going forward. So basically it means that there is urgent need to control those particular loopholes so that we are able to cushion any leakage that happens. So basically there's that particular initiative from the government. That's why you've seen those particular allocations. And we've also seen initiatives to anchor that, one including the procurement, where they're saying they have gone e-procurement, and by I think by the end of this year, they have tested around 4 institutions and counties, and they're able to implement that fully. So basically, that's going one of the aspects to cushion that. They have also talked about accrual accounting. That's also an aspect to control leakages and corruption, and not going deep into accounting. So accrual accounting basically means you only account for what you have done and what you have received. So we also going to cure the issue of pending bills and corruption, that particular aspect we've seen in that particular budget.
What are the odds that this is going to work? Because remember when counties, they introduced the IFMIS to deal with the public spending, and yet it did not stop, leakages. What are the odds that this is going to work this time?
So we started IFMIS, and then that was the revenue side, or the finance management system. So we did not automate procurement. So now the two have been combined. So now we are trying to, the initiative to lock both ends, both the finance part and the procurement part. So basically it's going to be an initiative that might yield some results, because as long as the procurement remains manual or without control, then basically it's a challenge. So maybe the two, when they're tied together, we might have a change that will be achieved compared to what IFMIS could do when it was alone. Yes.
Let's now talk about, we had talked about the winners earlier. Let's talk about the losers. Yes. Of course, we saw that government, it bowed to pressure. They removed the transaction costs that were to be increased for mobile transactions. But there are some sectors that have been impacted. Yes. There's betting and gambling. He said that it's a problem for the young people, and that is why they're increasing the excise duty, is it, to 20%. Yes. What are your thoughts on this? Is this going to work?
I don't think gambling is a big menace, as it might be said. We've seen complaints about some mogoka, so maybe they would have focused on that. We would have gotten more taxes compared to what they are saying with betting, because we saw what happened a few years ago when one of the biggest company in betting had to, I think they left this country to another country. So also we need to look at what this betting company also do to this particular economy in terms of supporting local business, CSR, and supporting sporting activities. So with given the increased tax on these particular institutions, we might not have a big plus, because they are very flexible. They can move anytime to different countries. So we might look forward to see any benefit, but we might experience exits in those companies going to other economies where we have favorable tax system on that case.
Of course, when you're looking at sin taxes, you also have to consider the business implication of it. The alcohol bit of it, he said that now it will be according to how strong, let's call it that, the alcohol is. Do you think this will give some sort of predictability to the alcohol manufacturers and even attract new entrants?
Well, basically, we've seen even some aspects of the alcohol getting some relief, because from the economic point of view, we usually tax items that have inelastic demand. There's a bit of economics, whereby even if you change the prices, people will not change their consumption behavior. We have taxed this particular product to an extent. The prices have affected the consumption behavior, and then they have now come down. So then with that particular predictability, we might have more entrants in the market. So basically, it might be a plus to some aspect of that particular industry, those who have been affected positively, and basically a negative to those who have been affected negatively. But because they are in elastic demand, if you take 2 beers, you cannot take one because the price has gone up. You always want to push your budget. So that particular aspect makes this particular industry very, very resilient, despite increase in taxes. Yes.
Another tax that is definitely going to impact a lot of Kenyans is the motor vehicle tax. Yes. And when we talk about the motor vehicle tax, it is not just people who own vehicles, because it will also lead to increases in fares for those who use public service vehicles. So tell us your thoughts in terms of the impact of the motor vehicle tax.
About the motor vehicle tax, there is something here that I've been thinking about, that they're saying the minimum is the maximum is 100,000, and then they're saying 2.5 value of that particular motor vehicle, and then the minimum is 5,000 if I'm not wrong. So basically what it means, if 2.5% is 100,000, then what is 100%? Around 5 million or so, if I'm not wrong. So
up at 4 million, actually.
4 million.
4 million, yeah.
So basically it means if you have a motor vehicle worth around 20 million, you're going to pay how much? 100,000. So you have saved how much? If you had to do 2.5% of 20 million, that is what you're supposed to pay. But in this case, you're paying 100. So you have saved, you as someone who has a vehicle higher than the value of 100%. So then we have someone else. The average value of motor vehicles in this economy is around 2 million, 2.5. So the 2.5 million person vehicle pays the exact of 2.5% without saving. But the person who has a vehicle above 5 million, of course, they are making savings. That is one of the distress in that particular tax. Number two, the other one, it's not an income. Owning a vehicle is not an income. So you're basically taxing a cost. Then you walk into a petrol station, you pay all those particular build-up taxes on fuel, then that particular the same vehicle is being taxed, motor vehicle tax, then the insurance companies are not revenue collecting agents, also giving them an extra role, which means they'll have to employ extra people to collect this particular revenue on behalf of the government. So it also inconveniences the insurance companies. So basically, but the most worrying aspect that it is an expense that we want to tax, and basically we should tax income, so whereby you added a value or you generated an income, but only in a motor vehicle. I'm yet to learn how it is an income, not an expense.
And of course, if you're doing business with the vehicle, yes, you're paying tax on that business, whether it's transporting goods or whatever it is. When you talk about the motor vehicle tax, what are the risks of this tax in terms of, for the insurance industry especially?
Of course, when the cost of insuring vehicles definitely it increases towards the purchasing power of this particular person who owns this vehicle. Basically, you're going to see some scrupulous means of getting insurance that are not genuine. People might decide I can do a week or two without the insurance. I first get money so that I can be able to go to this particular underwriter and get my policy or broker. So basically we are going to see some challenges in that particular industry. So the other aspect is that this cost will be transferred to the consumer when it comes to public service transport. So basically the fares must increase because of this particular increased cost. Then if you are going to transport your agricultural products from the farm to the market, of course you have to transfer that particular cost to the consumer. So basically we are saying we're increasing cost of logistics and procurement of goods and services that use public service by 2.5%.
So this has far-reaching implications.
Of course it has an extensive effect in the economy because even in the layman's language, if you get sukuma wiki that has been transported from Machakos or Kiambu to Githurai 45, if they bring a bale of sukuma wiki at 500 and we have a 2.5 tax on that particular motor vehicle, then it is going to be transferred to this particular sukuma wiki. So this sukuma wiki is transported to a certain estate in Nairobi where they hold one bunch at 10 bob. It will not be 10 bob today. After that will be around 15 bob. So that particular impact is going to be pushed the last consumer in that particular procurement channel. Yes.
So what would be your thoughts in terms of bringing in this tax, introducing this tax? Is there a softer way of doing it?
So basically it could have been and mostly when we talk about taxing an expense, a motor vehicle, I would say it's not the best way to go about it. Then we need to look at the aspect of which commodities that we tax in this economy. Then we also look at, if we are saying our GDP is growing at this particular rate, we can go to a limit of 20% in terms of tax of our GDP. We need to look at so many other aspects that are not being taxed that we can tax. Number 3, the other aspect is to grow the economy. When the economy grows, what happens? If there were 10 shops in a certain street, then there will be 15. So you have extra shop to tax. The number of economic units that are taxable in this economy must be increased. That is how we increase the tax base positively, but not taxing the same economic unit different times, different ways. Then we have another tax that we also don't recognize. It's called the dark tax, whereby you have the dependency ratio in this economy. It's also too much.
Black tax.
Black tax. So we've overtaxed this particular economic unit. And then we also forget there is another black tax that this person is also paying. So we need to expand the economy, then we're able to get new tax based on how the economy grows. Yes.
So it's a bit premature.
Exactly.
All right. Let's talk about climate change. Of course, even in his introduction, he was Professor Ndung'u was very categorical about the climate change mitigation and all that. Yet in the finance bill, there are proposals to remove tax exemptions for e-mobility and also solar energy.
So basically, we saw that we call it the eco tax or something of that sort. So basically, it's affecting the initiative that the government has been putting in terms of pushing people towards towards activities that don't affect the economy, our ecosystem or climate. But of course, we have a different entrance into this particular economy in terms of support, or in terms of grants and government support from external players around the climate issue. So basically, maybe it is going to cushion the tax that we collect, but of course, it's going to have some negative effect in terms of the milestone that the government has done in terms of ensuring that we control the devastating effect that we have had on the climate. So basically, we would wish to see how far it goes without having a negative impact. But of course, there are so many interested stakeholders externally in this particular issue of climate change. So basically, in general, we're going to have a positive because of the stakeholders that are involved. Yes.
What would be your analysis of this budget in terms of the impact on the common mwananchi? What should the common mwananchi brace for in this coming financial year?
I would not say that the budget is expansionary in terms of it's aggressive towards opening up the economy. It's a very strategic budget that is aimed to prosper some different aspects of the economy. So what we expect that it can have the expansionary effect that might come with, that we expect some stimulus program going forward to see whether they can be able to push to cushion the mwananchi, because I think we have not seen much conversation around kazi kwa vijana, but even though we've seen around 5 billion going to the hustler fund, so basically that's a direct cash to the mwananchi. So basically, it's a very strategic budget that we have not seen being aggressive toward putting money in people's pocket, but rather to create a conducive environment for production. Yes.
The government says that all this is happening so that we can be self-sufficient and, stop over-depending on borrowing. In the long term, is this strategy going to work?
We have had budgets over a number of years, and they have always grown. We have seen budgets grow by 1.7% in average in this economy, but this one we project to grow, they're saying to grow by almost 5% by the time we reach 2026, because that's where they project we might be stable a bit as an economy towards independence in terms of revenue generation. So basically, we are not expecting to see any miracle between what has happened in the last financial year and this one, because we have seen this growth in terms of budget and revenue projection, and we have not had significant impact in the economy. So basically, not unless we have individual changes in different sectors, but to say we are going to have a very stable economic growth that we're going to be realized in the near future might be quite aggressive, optimistic. Yes.
Before we close the conversation, I'd like to hear your views on recurrent expenditure. Of course, it's a big part of expenditure that we have in this country that consumes quite a bit of the budget. The efforts towards reducing that, what would it take to achieve a balance where our recurrent expenditure is not almost crippling us?
What we have seen, we've seen some initiative by the government. One is what I had mentioned here about freezing employment for 1 year. We don't know whether that includes replacements, where a person has left, they have to be replaced. We've also seen they're saying we public sector need to stop rehabilitation and partitioning of offices. I don't know how significant that was. There's also initiative, another initiative that I've seen around the same is trainings in public sector to be done within the public sector institutions, not outside, basically that to cushion trainings. So basically all that, the initiatives to reduce the recurrent expenditure. But the other issue is that to reduce an instant recurrent expenditure, basically, and the largest being public salaries, is a tall order, because not unless we have a structured way of exit, maybe retirement or the retirement handshake, what we call the golden handshake history that was there before, maybe those aspects, but it needs to be at a decreasing rate over time, so that we squeeze. Because they're also saying we are going to see mergers on public sector entities. We are going to see some entities being collapsed. So basically, all that the initiative to reduce the recurrent expenditure, but it's not going to be in the short run, maybe in the long run.
Yes. So as we close, what are your closing remarks?
So we're waiting for the finance bill to see what's on the other side, then we can debate from there.
Okay, we wait for the finance bill. Awesome, thank you very much. I've been speaking with David Kingo, who is an economist, and he has helped us to unpack those numbers in the budget 2024-2025 that was read today. Of course, we shall be bringing you the reactions on social media. It was quite a lit day on social media. All that is coming up after this break. Do stay with us.
It's Campus Tour Ijumaa hii ya tarehe 14 mwezi huu mwaka huu kuanzia saa 3 asubuhi hadi saa 6 mchana. Mpango mzima wa Mashavu utakujia live kutoka TUM Technical University of Mombasa kupitia station yako bomba ya Radio Pwani FM na station yako bomba ya runinga KBC Channel 1. Pata burudani, codes za kitana, interviews za wasanii moja kwa moja kutoka eneo la tukio. Ni hapo Technical University of Mombasa, TUM Mashavu inasija.
Maji ni uhai, maji ni haki yako.
Clean and reliable water is vital to every citizen. But did you know that non-revenue water, which includes leakages, theft, vandalism, and inefficient systems, poses a serious threat to our water supply?
The water that will get to me, the quality will be lower because it will get contaminated before it gets to be sealed and repaired.
As a water consumer, you can get involved in reducing non-revenue water and ensure efficient water use.
Sasa mimi nikitembea niona mahali maji pipe imepasuka inamwaga maji. Mimi naangalia naona kabisa ni pipe. Huwa nachukua simu yangu napigia wenye wanatengeneza. Wanakuja kutengeneza hapo.
And if you have any information of somebody who has an illegal connection, please report it either to the water company or to the water police units or to the water services regulator.
WASREB, celebrating 20 years of water services regulation.
Asanteni sana kwa kuwezesha Lotomoto kuwafikia wengi wasiojiweza kupitia star 570 hash. Hapo umewafuta wengi machozi, umewaelimisha, umewapa makao, umewapa lishe na umewapa matibabu kwa namna tofauti.
Asanteni.
Asanteni. Asanteni sana.
Na kwako wewe mchezaji wa Lotomoto, unajipa fursa ya kujishindia Probox nayo. Na kama Probox haikufai na umejishindia, tunakupa taslim 750,000 Kenyan shillings na mshindi na mtangaza 30th of June. Na mwezi wa July 28th na mtangaza mshindi wa Demio nayo. Na kama utaki na umeshinda, wacha gari, chukua chapa 750,000 Kenyan shillings kwenye star 570 hash. Wewe si mshindi tu, wewe ni tegemeo kubwa. Tusaidie na tushinde.
Kikohozi cha muda wowote, kutokwa na jasho kwa wingi usiku, uchungu kwenye kifua, afya kudhoofika, tafuta matibabu.
Eat. I'm coming. Nisaidie tu na hizo 70 hours zingine, alafu mimi ndakuwa nimekusort. Don.
Hatuwezi pea mtu loan kama hana garanta.
This is business.
Buda, unajiingizaji kwa mess kama hiyo?
Bingwa TB waishi poa.
Welcome back. Now, let's go to the region where Uganda and Tanzania joined Kenya in unveiling their 2024-2025 budget, focusing on driving investments and rationalizing public expenditure. In Kampala, Finance Minister Matia Kasaija announced a 72.1 trillion Ugandan shillings budget, which is equivalent to 2.5 trillion Kenya shillings.
Finance Minister Mwigulu Nchemba read a 49.3 trillion Tanzania shillings or 2.31 trillion Kenya shillings budget, vowing to deepen investments in infrastructure and agriculture. Nduta Mukami has more details.
The three East African Community member states on Thursday afternoon read their budgets simultaneously as per the EAC treaty. Rwanda read its budget in May due to the looming national elections, and other EAC member countries like Burundi, South Sudan, Democratic Republic of Congo, and the latest entrant Somalia failed to read their budget statements due to security and political reasons. In Uganda, the Finance Minister Matia Kasaija announced a 72.136 trillion Ugandan shillings budget, which is approximately 2.477 billion Kenyan shillings. This budget marks an increase of 14.050 trillion Ugandan shillings, equivalent to 688 million shillings, from the earlier projection of 58.34 trillion Ugandan shillings, equivalent to 1.995 billion Kenya shillings, underscoring a significant fiscal expansion aimed at propelling the nation's growth. Out of this year's budget, about 3.1 trillion Ugandan shillings, equivalent to 103.2 million Kenya shillings, has been earmarked to service Uganda's debt, 12 trillion Ugandan shillings, equivalent to 412 million Kenya shillings, catered to domestic refinancing, and 9.5 trillion Ugandan shillings, equivalent to 309 million Kenya shillings, for project development. Tanzania, which is the second largest economy in the trading bloc after Kenya, unveiled a 49.346 trillion Tanzanian shilling budget, equivalent to 2.308 billion Kenya shillings, from the current 44.4 trillion Tanzanian shillings. Tanzania's budget is up 11.2%. Tanzania's Finance and Planning Minister Mwigulu Nchemba said the government will spend about 33.5 trillion Tanzanian shillings, equivalent to 1.62 billion Kenya shillings, for recurrent expenditure, and 15.78 trillion Tanzanian shillings, that is equivalent to 737 million Kenya shillings, for development expenditure, especially for the revamp of existing stadia and building of new ones in preparation of AFCON 2027. Nduta Mukami for Prime Edition.
And Thursday afternoon saw a surge of online activity as the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, presented this year's 3.92 trillion shillings national budget.
While the official announcement focused on the allocation of funds and tax proposals, it was the netizens who truly stole the show on social media platforms, as Trevor Ngeno narrates.
As soon as the news of budget presentation hit, social media exploded with a mix of reactions, full of humor and anticipation. The finance bill, with its new levies and taxes, became a hot topic on social media, with messages flooding social media full of satire and humor, as well as witty memes. And we got all that captured. On Twitter, hashtags like Budget Kenya 2024 and Reject Finance Bill 2024 began trending, attracting thousands of posts. One popular video clip shared widely was of a Taiwanese member of parliament who just 2 weeks ago allegedly attempted to steal a bill in parliament to prevent it from being passed. This, they claimed, was a responsibility they had bestowed upon Mumia's East MP Peter Salasia to deliver as soon as the finance bill was presented to Parliament. But it looks more like Kenyans couldn't tell the difference between the Finance Bill 2024 and the budget. They went on rampage as some users on X shared a list of National Assembly members urging Kenyans to call them and express their dissatisfaction with the budget proposals. Others resorted to calling their MPs, urging them to reject whatever proposals were to be presented. Another viral post humorously questioned the logic behind taxing items like diapers and sanitary pads.
While most of the posts were light-hearted and funny, they also carried an undercut of concern about the budget and the cost of living. As the budget presentation continued to unfold, it was clear that the struggle is real. But at least we can find some humor amidst the financial chaos. Whether through biting satire or laugh-out-loud memes, netizens once again proved that when it comes to making light of serious issues, they have got it all in the bag untaxed. Trevor Ngendo for Prime Edition.
Betty, would you like an opportunity to read out some of the comments on Twitter?
No, I think Trevor has got it right.
Never a dull moment in Kenya. Now, the Ministry of Sports reward scheme for sportsmen and women who fly Kenya's flag high at international events may continue without hitches after National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Professor Njuguna Ndung'u allocated 16.5 billion shillings to sports, arts and social development and another 2.2 billion shillings for tourism promotion by the Kenyan sportsmen and women.
The proposal comes just 43 days before a large Kenyan contingent travels to France for the 2024 Paris Olympic Games.
The Ministry of Sports has for a while now rewarded sportsmen and women who excel in international competitions, with the latest team to receive a shot in the arm being the Kenya National Rugby Sevens team for securing a ticket back to the HSBC Sevens World Series during the playoffs in Madrid, Spain. The Sevens team received just over 5 million shillings for their performance in the qualifying rounds, and the next team closing in on a check is the Kenya National Under-17 Girls Football Team, Junior Starlets, who just need a draw or a win in the return leg against Burundi on Sunday to qualify for the World Cup later this year. That reward scheme may continue without delays after a proposal to allocate to the scheme a percentage of the 18.7 billion shillings set aside in today's budget.
We are also cognizant of the brand value of Kenyans participating and exerting in international sports arena as incalculable. To support tourism, sports culture, and even recreation, I have proposed an allocation of 23.7 billion, and this includes an allocation of 16.5 billion for the Sports Arts Social Development Fund, Kenya shillings 4.9 billion for the Tourism Fund, and Kenya shillings 2.2 billion for the Tourism Promotion Fund.
Kenyan athletes may also benefit from the reward scheme on arrival from Paris, France in August, where they will compete in the Olympic Games from the 26th of July to 11th August. It will be double reward for the Olympic athletes after World Athletics became the first federation to introduce rewards for the athletes at the Olympics, announcing on 10th of April this year rewards for gold medalists from the Paris Games this summer.
Faith Kipyegon charging to the line. Is it going to be a world record? Yes, it is! She smashed it!
Barclay Feather, Prime Edition Sports.
Tarehe 14 mwezi huu mwaka huu kuanzia saa 3 asubuhi hadi saa 6 mchana. Mpango mzima wa mashavu utakujia live kutoka TUM Technical University of Mombasa kupitia stesheni yako bomba ya Radio Pwani FM na stesheni yako bomba ya runinga KBC Channel 1. Pata burudani, kodi za kitaa na interviews za wasanii moja kwa moja kutoka eneo la tukio. Ni hapo Technical University of Mombasa. TUM mashavu inasija.
Maji ni uhai, maji ni haki yako.
Clean and reliable water is vital to every citizen. But did you know that non-revenue water, which includes leakages, theft, vandalism, and inefficient systems, poses a serious threat to our water supply?
Nuru, mimi kila kikuona wa moyo wangu unadunda dunda.
Na ulikuwa utaki udunde. Kufa basi moyo wache kudunda. Yaani mimi niko peke yangu kama jini vile. Naomba yaishi jamani.
Wasreb, celebrating 20 years of water services regulation.
Kenya's trackstars converge on the red tartan at Nyayo National Stadium, battling for nothing but a chance to represent the country at the Olympic Games in Paris. Watch the national trials live on KBC Channel 1 on Friday and Saturday, beginning at 10 a.m. KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
Welcome back. Now away from the budget, a magistrate is fighting for her life at a Nairobi hospital after she was shot twice by a senior police officer before he was killed in a shootout with colleagues at Makadara Law Court.
Monica Kivuti was presiding over a case involving the wife of Chief Inspector of Police Samson Kipruto, accused of 2.9 million shillings through false pretense, and when she failed to grant her bail, the police officer walked in, firing at her twice before police officers nearby responded, killing him on the spot.
In an incident that shocked the nation on Thursday afternoon, a police officer mandated to keep law and order, resorting to an act of infamy. Samson Kipruto, the OCS at Londiani Police Station, had attended the hearing of a case where his 48-year-old wife Jennifer Wairimu was charged with obtaining 2.9 million shillings through false pretense. But things, according to the police, fell apart after Wairimu's bond was cancelled by the Makadara Law Courts. Principal Magistrate Monica Kivuti. The agitated Kipruto, said to have been armed with a pistol, walked behind the open court and twice shot at the magistrate, with the bullet hitting her thigh and the chest.
We were all told to lie down. They all down, and then it happened really fast. Within a span of a moment, it happened. And everyone was up and running, and the prison wardens were also shooting, so we were told to lie down.
Whatever judgment or whatever ruling that is rendered, it is never the end of life. What you can do is just apply for either review by the same magistrate. If you're not satisfied with him, you can just appeal to a higher court.
Nairobi's police boss Adamson Bungei said the police officer who were within the court responded, neutralizing Kipruto on the spot.
There had been a case which is ongoing, and the ruling was determined today. And during the time of that ruling or judgment given, a situation erupted up in court number 9, whereby one suspect entered to the courts and injured the magistrate in that particular court and the orderlies.
In the shootout, 3 court orderlies, Augustine Kidhumbi, Maureen Lepes and Eunice Masharia, sustained gunshot wounds. And in solidarity with the injured magistrate, Kenya Magistrate and Judges Association Vice President Rhoda Yator condemned the incident, calling on the government to increase judiciary budget and beef up security of judicial officers.
We cannot allow such acts of violence to go unanswered. In the instance case at Makadara Law Courts, the facilities are overstretched. 3 of the courtrooms and judicial officers sit under the tents, and which expose them to security lapse.
The association said the safety of judicial officers is not only a matter of personal concern, but of fundamental significance to preservation of the justice system.
The 2 judicial officers, actually we celebrate them. A male police officer and a female police officer who put their lives at risk to safeguard the judicial officer.
The body of the deceased OCS was moved to City Mortuary awaiting autopsy. Justice served dissatisfied clientele, but the question that begs, who allowed the senior police officer with a gun inside the courtroom? Ruth Wamboi reporting from Makadara Law Courts.
Indeed, that's the big question, and we'll be following up that story for you. Now, the government has allocated an additional 2 billion shillings towards supporting the country's dairy sector.
President William Ruto, who was in Meru County, where he met farmers, said the funding is expected to boost dairy cooperatives to offer competitive prices and enhance farmers' access to credit.
The president returned to Meru County Thursday with a bag of goodies for the residents and in particular the farmers.
Leo tena nimefika hapa kwa sababu hawa Meru Dairy mwaka uliopita waliniuliza ya kwamba wanataka serikali ya Kenya isimame na wao katika kujenga hii kiwanda hapa ya chakula ya ng'ombe zetu.
Speaking in Matungu, Imenti South, where he laid a foundation stone for the Meru Maziwa millers that has a processing capacity of 12,000 tons a month, Ruto ordered dairy cooperatives to pay farmers, delivering milk better and promptly.
Na ndio mnajua leo katika budget ile itasomwa kule bunge, tumeweka bilioni 2 ingine ya kusaidia hii dairy sector katika Republic of Kenya.
Additionally, he reaffirmed the decision by the government to write off 6 billion shillings in debt owed by coffee farmers in a bid to rejuvenate the struggling sector and boost the livelihoods of over 600,000 farmers.
Nisha shilingi bilioni 6.9 kuhakikisha kwamba wakulima wetu wa kahawa wanaondolewa mzigo ya madeni. Na tumekubaliana hivi mambo matatu. Ya kwanza, tumekubaliana hiyo pesa sio ya watu hapo brokers ya katikati. Hiyo pesa lazima ifikie mkulima mwenyewe. Number 1.
He also warned that the government will firmly deal with anyone selling coffee farmers fertilizer at a higher price than the recommended 2,500 shillings per bag.
Hii basi ya Mitungu.
Earlier, he handed over a bus to Mitungu Technical Training Institute, where he was accompanied by Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, who said Mount Kenya leaders remain keen in assisting the president to implement the development agenda.
Sisi zote kazi yetu ni kumsaidia rais wetu ndio apange mikakati ya maendeleo katika Jamhuri ya Kenya. Na hasa tunajivunia hapa katika kaunti hii yetu ya Meru, rais anaendelea kututembelea tukiwa tunampenda.
Joseph Ohungu reporting for Prime Edition.
Now, the Chief of Staff and Head of Public Service, Felix Koskei, has warned public servants against engaging in politics at the expense of service delivery.
Speaking during the launch of the Huduma Kenya and Kenya School of Government Customer Service Excellence Training Framework for Public Service, Koskei revealed that political insulation from a section of public servants is derailing the bottom-up transformation agenda set out by President William Ruto. He further challenged the public servants to remain neutral and non-partisan while executing their mandate of serving Kenyans. Koskei at the same time warned the public servants against engaging in corruption, saying those found culpable will face the law.
We are working very hard to ensure that we insulate the public service from political interference, from political noises, and from pressure for public servants to do wrong things, so that they stay and become the backbone of the country and do their job. Whether somebody is abusing the other, whether somebody is doing the other opposite, whether there is campaign or not, the public service should stand firm and drive the economic agenda of the country.
This collaboration is going to take Huduma service, the DNA, as I'm calling it. We are exporting the DNA of Huduma into the rest of public service.
Last year alone, we attended to 13 million Kenyans, offering them various services in these centers. We intend to gradually increase this number to 15 million once we open the new Huduma centers.
And family, friends and various leaders congregated at the Nairobi Chapel, Ngong Road, for the memorial service of reggae MC Jambi Koikai. Jambi was described as a great entertainer whose energy was infectious on and off stage, with a shrewd commitment to making a difference.
Jambi will be laid to rest on Friday, the 14th, at the Langata Cemetery, and we wish her family our deepest condolences.
A somber mood filled the air at the Nairobi Chapel, Ngong Road. Friends, relatives, and various leaders came together to celebrate a fallen heroine of our time. Her colleagues in the media eulogized Jambi as a beacon of resilience and hope. Jambi's mother mourned the loss of a daughter, a friend, and a companion. Her father recounted the moments they shared despite not always being in her life.
It is only when you go to Form 1 and I was back in the country that we're able to meet when you came to the office to look for me. I may have not fulfilled my duties as your dad. Please forgive me.
Prominent figures who are here to honor her life hailed her for her courage in pursuance of justice.
And I know that Jambi was a fighter, was a warrior.
My mind is already exploring how we will use this platform to honor the memory of this incredible young Kenyan.
The late Jambi started her career at Kenya Broadcasting Corporation as an intern in 2007, where she rose through the ranks to become a TV news presenter before moving on to other ventures and making a name for herself in the entertainment industry as a reggae DJ. Jambi has had a long fight with endometriosis. She was keen to share her struggles and educate her fans the challenges of the disease. She passed on June 3rd while undergoing treatment at a Nairobi hospital. She will be laid to rest tomorrow, June 14th, at Langata Cemetery in the county of Nairobi. Irene Mchuma Odim, the Prime Edition.
To make you proud, I'll never be more loved than I am right now.
We now move to Scales of Justice, where the Director of Public Prosecution, Renson Mulele, has applied to withdraw a fraud case against Kakamega Deputy Governor Ayub Savula and his two wives in a 122 million shillings government advertising agency case.
Chief Magistrate Lucas Onyina was on Thursday informed that the High Court had ruled that the contract between Savula and the government was valid and that the current case before the Magistrate Court can't stand. The court will make a ruling on the DPP's application to withdraw the case on 1st of July 2024. In February this year, former ICT Principal Secretary Sami Itamere was set free in the theft case. Kakamega Deputy Governor Ayub Savula and his two wives were to go through the full trial.
That they were unable to provide an alternative witness due to the fact that she handled the matters in question. That's between the Commission and government advertising agencies solely, alone.
For purposes of the monies or the cash bill that had been deposited, once you make the order an order be made to be refunded back to them. We thank the DPP for that.
Private hospitals across the country have been urged to lower the prices of blood transfusion services to enhance accessibility. Kenya Tissue and Transplant Authority Regional Director Festus Koech, who spearheaded the two-day blood donation drive at the Kenya Archives grounds in Nairobi, cautioned against high costs on such critical services to create a barrier for many patients in need.
During the drive, Kenyans were urged to join the cause, which is aimed at replenishing blood banks in the country. Kenya Broadcasting Corporation partnered with the Kenya Tissue and Transplant Authority for a blood donation drive. So far, 350 pints of blood of the targeted 600 pints have been donated.
And we're asking all Kenyans who are around or circles to mobilize their people to come in so that we also can be able to give blood. It's very important because when people are sick, they need to assess blood, and if it's not there, we are losing life.
We wanted to educate and encourage Kenyans that we need to care for one another.
So we saw it's very important to take part in this activity, to donate blood and save a life.
Well, I believe it's now time for us to finally take a break.
Right, and after that we shall be coming back with sports news. Bernardo Kumo is standing by. Do stay with us.
Kenya's trackstars converge on the red tartan at Nyayo National Stadium, battling for nothing but a chance to represent the country at the Olympic Games in Paris. Watch the national trials live on KBC Channel 1 on Friday and Saturday, beginning at 10 a.m. KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
Sports News is brought to you by Mozart Bet.
Dealing with the fiscal shape of the country, to sports with me, Bernardo Kumu, where we begin with athletics, where world record holder Beatrice Chebet will lead the Kenyan 10,000 meters women's team to the Paris Olympic Games set to be held from the 26th of July to 11th of August in France. Now, she was among the 6 athletes named today by Athletics Kenya before the rest of the Kenyan team is unveiled in the national trials, which will be broadcast live on KBC Channel 1 tomorrow and Saturday. Now, Chebet, who set a world record of 28 minutes 54.14 seconds in the women's 10,000 meters during the 2024 Prefontaine Classic, was named in the ladies team together with 2022 world bronze medalist Margaret Chelimo and Lilian Kasait, who finished third in the Prefontaine Classic, which was the 5th leg of the Diamond League series in Eugene. Daniel Mateiko headlines the men's team after winning the 10,000 meters in Eugene and will run side by side with compatriots Nicholas Kipkorir and Bernard Kibet, who finished second and third respectively in the 25-lap race. And to tennis, where hosts Kenya began their playoff matches on a losing note after going down by 2-1 to Nigeria in their first playoff match of the Billie Jean King Cup Group 3 at the Nairobi club. Now, Alicia Owegi began Kenya's quest but lost a 2-love of 6-4 to Nigeria's Barakat Quadri, but bounced back when Africa Games champion Angelo Kutoi beat Adesua Osabohien 6-3, 6-3. The Kenyan pair of Rosalida Asumwa and Angelo Kutoi lost their doubles match 2-love of 6-3, 7-6 to the Nigerian duo of Adesua and Kadri Barakat. Despite the defeat, Kenya is still in the race for the promotion place and will face South Africa in a must-win match on Saturday. Now, the winner of the promotion playoff, pitting Nigeria, South Africa and host Kenya, will be promoted to the Billie Jean King Cup Africa Europe Group 2 in 2025.
Is still on with the any round robin pool. We're still on. We want to prepare. We want to go recover properly, and we are ready for Saturday. If we are able to go very big on Saturday, then everything else will be okay.
It's really amazing feeling for us. Like I said at the beginning of this tournament, we came here to win, and last year we were really close. Of course, we had like some tough losses, and this year we just tried to like do better and to learn from those losses, and we're really glad to be able to pull it off today.
Yes, South Africa, we know the competition will definitely have to be focused 100%, and our energy is going to have to be on point, and we're very excited to have a chance to play for the promotional.
And we wish Angela Oktoi and her teammates all the best ahead of their crucial match. That's on Saturday. Elsewhere to international news now, where host Germany will kickstart the 2024 European Championship against Scotland in Group A encounter at the Munich Football Arena tomorrow night. Holders Italy will start their title defense against Albania on Saturday.
Germany, who won the European Championship in 1996, will be going into the match full of confidence after good preparations, which saw them win 3 matches against France, the Netherlands and Greece before drawing with Ukraine. The 2024 Euro hosts are hungry for success in their bid for a 4th title and will be looking forward to appease their home fans. Scotland will be participating in the 2nd major tournament since 1998 after they finished 2nd in Group F during the 2022 FIFA World Cup qualifiers. The team has had a good build-up with victories over 3 times winners Spain, Norway and Georgia, and their coach Steve Clark believes he has the best squad to surprise their opponents, starting with the hosts whom they want to upset in the opening match.
That's it from the sports desk. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Bernard Okumu.
Sports News was brought to you by Mozart Bet.
You can lift the plane. The higher you fly, the higher your win. The sky is the limit. Mozart Bet.
Thank you, Bernard Okumu. We are now coming to the end of today's bulletin. It feels like we've been with the viewers the whole day.
Indeed, it has been the whole day.
Yes. Yeah. What has been the highlight for you for today?
Business for the business desk. Yes. This day is it's the biggest day in the calendar, really. Yes. So I'm glad that this is done. But the dampening of the mood by the fracas in the Makadara law courts, yes. I think that is what killed the day for me.
Yes, yeah. It really did kill the day. A lot of lessons to learn right there. But we are still thinking about the 3.9 trillion shilling budget. I think for me the highlight for today has been reading news with you, Kiptum. You're such a great partner. Thank you so much. And also to our news editors and especially the business reporters who put up today's bulletin with excellence. From us and the rest of the team, we do want to wish you a very good night.
Good night.
Kikohozi cha muda wowote, kutokwa na jasho kwa wingi usiku, uchungu kwenye kifua, afya kudhoofika, tafuta matibabu.
What would you